Imagine finding out that your own sister, the person you grew up with, shared secrets with, laughed with, and trusted through every storm of life, was planning the most important day of her life, and you weren't invited. No dress fitting, no bridesmaid role, no seat at the ceremony. Not even a phone call. Just silence. Then, the news broke through a family friend's careless slip of the tongue. My sister was getting married, and I wasn't on the guest list. The betrayal didn't just sting, it burned. People often say family comes first, that blood ties are unbreakable. But what happens when that bond is slashed open by jealousy, pride, or something darker? When you realize the one person you thought would stand beside you forever has erased you from her happiest moment, the pain cuts deeper than any enemy's betrayal. I stared at my phone for hours, waiting for her to explain, to send a message, even to lie. But nothing came. Only silence. The shock turned to anger, the anger to sorrow, and the sorrow to a strange kind of strength. Because if she wanted to cut me out, I would show her what being excluded truly meant. I wasn't going to sit at home sobbing while she walked down the aisle. I had something she didn't, someone in fact. A man whose name turned heads and whose wealth opened doors most people couldn't even knock on. My fiancé. A billionaire who adored me, who wanted me by his side, who treated me like I was the center of his universe. So when the wedding day arrived, I didn't watch from afar or cry in silence. Instead, I was halfway across the world, on a private yacht, champagne in my hand, while my sister's tears told a story of regret she never expected to write. The day I found out about my sister's wedding was the day a piece of my heart died. It started so simply, so carelessly, with words spoken by my mother that should have brought joy but instead cracked my world in half. I had come over that evening after work, carrying fresh flowers for her, because I knew she loved having them on the table. As we sat in the living room, sipping tea, she mentioned off-handedly that she was going shopping with my sister the next morning. "We're going to look for her wedding dress," she said, her voice soft but laced with excitement. My cup nearly slipped from my hands. My sister's wedding dress. I blinked at her, thinking perhaps I had misheard. But the silence that followed, the way my mother's eyes darted away from mine, told me I had not. It was a moment of disbelief, the kind where the mind refuses to accept what the ears have heard. My sister, my own flesh and blood, was getting married. She had not told me. She had not invited me. Not even a text, a call, or a mention of the man she was about to marry. My pulse raced as I stared at my mother, waiting for her to correct herself, to laugh it off and say, "Oh no, not a wedding dress, just a party dress." But she didn't. She shifted uncomfortably and muttered something about not wanting to be caught in the middle. That was when I knew the truth. I went home that night in silence, my hands shaking as I held the steering wheel. My mind kept running in circles. Why hadn't she told me? What had I done to deserve this? I opened my phone and scrolled through her social media, something I hadn't done in weeks. And there it was, the proof. Pictures of her engagement dinner, surrounded by friends and family. Smiles so wide they seemed plastered on. I wasn't in any of them. I hadn't even known it happened. Post after post showed her celebrating, announcing her new journey, thanking people for their love and support. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. The comments were filled with congratulations, but all I could feel was the sharp sting of exclusion. My own sister had erased me from her happiness. The next day I tried to reach her. I dialed her number 3 times before she finally picked up. Her tone was cool, almost annoyed. I asked her why she hadn't told me, why I wasn't invited, why she thought it was okay to cut me out like this. There was a pause, and then her voice, sharp, cold, deliberate, came through the line. "Because this is my day," she said. "And I don't want you overshadowing me." My breath caught in my throat. Overshadowing. She was my sister. I had never tried to take her light. Yet in her eyes I was a threat, not a family member. The words were knives. I hung up before my tears could choke me, before she could hear the sound of my heart breaking. For days afterward, I lived in a fog of sadness and disbelief. Memories of our childhood haunted me. Us playing dress-up in our mother's room, whispering secrets late into the night, promising each other we'd be there for every milestone. We had shared birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and triumphs. And now she had deliberately chosen to erase me from the most important day of her life. I walked through my apartment feeling like a ghost, the silence of my phone heavier than any noise. Friends called to check in, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. How could I? To admit that my own sister had cast me aside was too humiliating, too painful. It was my fiancé who finally broke the silence. He had been watching me closely, his eyes shadowed with concern as I drifted through the days like someone lost at sea. One evening he pulled me close, pressing his forehead to mine. "She doesn't deserve your tears," he said quietly. "You are worth more than this betrayal. Don't let her cruelty define you." His words were steady, grounding, and they reminded me of something I had nearly forgotten. I wasn't alone. I had someone who loved me fiercely, someone who had chosen me without hesitation. Where my sister had cut me out, he had pulled me closer. Still the pain lingered. At night I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing her words again and again. "I don't want you overshadowing me." What did that even mean? Had my happiness, my relationship, my life somehow threatened her? Was she so insecure that she saw me as competition instead of kin? Questions flooded my mind with no answers, only more ache. The betrayal wasn't just about missing a wedding. It was about realizing the bond one thought we had was not what I believed. She had drawn a line between us, and I was left standing on the outside. When the official wedding invitations began circulating among our extended family, my absence became the unspoken scandal. A cousin called to ask why I wasn't coming. An aunt messaged to say she was sorry I had been left out. Each time I felt another sting, another wave of shame. Everyone knew. Everyone could see what she had done to me. The embarrassment mixed with my grief until it became something heavier, almost unbearable. I cried until my eyes ached, until I had no more tears left. And yet, in the quiet that followed those storms, something hardened inside me. I realized that if she wanted me erased, I would not give her the satisfaction of my sorrow. I would not let her wedding day be the center of my world. I had my own life, my own joy, my own love. And though the wound was deep, I decided I would not bleed forever. My sister might have taken away my chance to stand at her side, but she could not take away my future. In that moment something shifted. Anger turned to resolve, and I whispered to myself in the darkness, if she didn't want me at her wedding, then she would watch me live a life so radiant, so untouchable, that her regret would follow her forever. The week after the confrontation with my sister was the hardest I had ever lived through. It was as if my heart had been placed in a vice, squeezed tighter every day, and no amount of tears seemed to loosen it. Everywhere I turned, reminders of her betrayal appeared like shadows I couldn't escape. At the grocery store, I overheard women excitedly talking about bridesmaid dresses. On television, a commercial showed a smiling bride walking down the aisle. Even walking through the park, I spotted a newly engaged couple taking photos, their joy stabbing into me like a cruel reminder of what I had been denied. The world seemed intent on forcing me to look at everything I was missing. And the most painful part was knowing that it wasn't fate or accident or distance that kept me away. It was her choice. My own sister had looked at me and decided I wasn't welcome in her happiness. I tried to bury myself in work, but concentration was impossible. My thoughts kept drifting to the past, to the laughter we once shared, the secrets we promised never to tell, the way she used to hold my hand when we were scared of thunder. How had that bond unraveled so completely? I thought back to her words on the phone. "I don't want you overshadowing me." They echoed in my mind like a cruel chant. Was she truly so jealous of me? Or was it about my fiancé, the man whose wealth and influence seemed to intimidate everyone we met? The more I thought about it, the more I began to realize that perhaps this had less to do with me and more to do with her insecurities. But that didn't make the wound any less sharp. My fiancé, always steady and calm, became my anchor during those stormy days. He refused to let me sink into despair. Every evening he pulled me into conversations, gently steering me away from the pain. He spoke of plans for our own future, of dreams he wanted to share with me. Sometimes he would make me laugh with silly stories from his business trips. Other times he would simply hold me until the tears slowed. One night, as we sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker below, he said something that would change everything. "Why waste your tears on someone who doesn't value you? Let's create a memory so beautiful that her betrayal will seem small by comparison. Let's go away, just you and me." At first, I resisted. Running away felt childish, like something a teenager might do after a fight. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized he was right. Why should I stay home, locked in sorrow, while she walked down the aisle as if she had won some silent war against me? Well, I wouldn't give her that power. If she didn't want me at her wedding, then I would give myself something better to remember. Something brighter. Something that didn't revolve around her cruelty but around my own joy. The plan came together quickly, almost effortlessly, as if fate was on our side. He arranged everything with a quiet efficiency that left me both stunned and grateful. Within days, flights were booked, a private villa secured, and a yacht reserved for a week-long escape to the Maldives. It sounded unreal, almost like a scene out of a movie. While my sister rehearsed her vows and fussed over flowers, I would be walking barefoot across white sand beaches, the turquoise ocean at my feet. The contrast felt poetic. She had tried to exclude me from her celebration, but in doing so, she had driven me into an experience that would eclipse her entire wedding day. As the departure date drew closer, my spirits began to shift. For the first time in weeks, I felt anticipation instead of sorrow. I started packing my favorite dresses, sun hats, and sandals, carefully folding them into suitcases as if each item was a promise of better days ahead. My fiancé surprised me with gifts: a silk gown for a romantic dinner, a pair of diamond earrings that glittered like stars. "You deserve to shine," he whispered as he fastened them on me. His words melted the last of my sadness into something stronger, something resembling hope. Still, a part of me hesitated. I couldn't completely silence the ache in my chest, the ache that whispered of betrayal and loss. On the eve of our flight, I found myself staring at a childhood photo tucked into my dresser drawer. It was of me and my sister, no older than 10, grinning with ice cream smeared across our faces. I traced her smile with my fingertip and wondered how we had gotten here, from innocent laughter to icy silence. My heart wanted to believe there was still love buried under her jealousy, but my mind reminded me of the cruel words she had spoken. Some wounds couldn't be ignored. The morning we left, I felt a strange mix of excitement and defiance. Walking through the airport with my fiancé's hand in mine, I caught our reflection in the glass walls. Two people stepping forward together, unbroken, unashamed. For the first time, I realized I wasn't running away from my sister's wedding. I was choosing something better. I was choosing myself, my happiness, my love. As the plane soared into the sky, leaving the city behind, I closed my eyes and let the weight of betrayal slip away. Ahead of me lay a paradise I had never dared to dream of, and beside me was a man who adored me more fiercely than anyone ever had. I didn't know what the future held or how my sister would feel when she realized what she had lost, but I knew one thing for certain. She had tried to break me, and instead, she had pushed me into a life more radiant than she could ever imagine. The engines roared, the clouds parted, and for the first time in weeks I smiled. The Maldives was like stepping into another world, a world so breathtakingly beautiful that it almost seemed unreal. When the plane touched down and the sea breeze greeted me, warm and salty against my skin, I felt something inside me loosen. A knot of grief that had tightened ever since I discovered my sister's betrayal. We boarded a private speedboat, gliding across waters so clear that I could see fish darting beneath the surface, their scales flashing silver in the sun. The horizon stretched endlessly, as if the ocean itself was inviting me to forget everything I had left behind. For the first time in weeks, I inhaled deeply without the weight of sorrow pressing down on my chest. Our villa was perched above the water, with glass floors that revealed the ocean beneath, and a deck that opened straight onto the turquoise sea. The moment I stepped inside, I felt like I was living inside a dream. A soft breeze carried the scent of salt and hibiscus, the white curtains billowed gently, and the sound of waves lapping against the stilts was like a lullaby meant only for me. My fiancé watched my expression with quiet satisfaction, as though each smile that returned to my lips was a gift he had been waiting for. "This is yours," he said softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "A world where you don't have to share your joy with anyone who doesn't deserve it." The days unfolded in a rhythm so different from the heavy silence I had endured back home. Each morning, I woke to the golden sun spilling across our bed, the water beneath us glittering like diamonds. We would have breakfast on the deck, fresh fruit, warm pastries, coffee strong enough to wake even the heaviest heart. Then came adventures, snorkeling among coral reefs alive with color, jet skiing across waves that splashed joy against my skin, lounging on the yacht as music drifted through the air. I laughed more in those few days than I had in months. Laughter that was light, unforced, untainted by bitterness. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought I had lost. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, we boarded the yacht for a private cruise. The deck was decorated with lanterns, casting soft golden glows as the ocean shimmered beneath us. A small orchestra played in the background, their music floating over the waves. My fiancé held my hand, his eyes never leaving mine. "You are more beautiful than this ocean," he whispered, and for once, I didn't dismiss the words as flattery. I felt it. I felt radiant, cherished, whole. As we toasted with champagne, I thought of my sister, somewhere back home preparing to walk down the aisle. She believed she had silenced me, erased me, but in truth she had freed me. The contrast became more poignant the next morning. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives, their words dripping with gossip disguised as concern. "Are you really not at the wedding?" one text read. Another message came with a photo. My sister in her white gown, smiling tightly, the edges of her eyes betraying tension. I looked at the image for a long time. Once, that sight would have broken me into pieces, but now it only brought a strange sense of clarity. I was not there, and I did not wish to be. Her world was filled with judgment, rivalry, and insecurity. Mine, at that moment, was filled with sunlight, ocean waves, and a man whose love wrapped around me like a shield. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. Did she notice my absence? Did it sting her when people asked where I was? Did she see the photos I had begun sharing? Me in flowing dresses, standing barefoot on white sand beaches, laughter spilling across the screen? The thought of her scrolling through them, her chest tightening with regret or jealousy, sent an unexpected thrill through me. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I realized I had taken back my power. She had excluded me to dim my light, and yet here I was, shining brighter than ever. That evening, my fiancé planned a dinner unlike anything I had experienced. A table was set directly on the beach, candles flickering in the warm night air, the sound of the tide our only companion. He had arranged for the chef to prepare my favorite dishes, each plate arriving like a work of art. As I sipped wine and listened to him talk about our future, about homes we might build, places we might travel, the family we might one day start, I felt a warmth spread through me that no betrayal could touch. It was then that I understood something profound. My sister might have shut a door, but in doing so, she had pushed me toward another door, one that opened into a life far grander than I had dared to imagine. Later, lying in his arms beneath a sky scattered with stars, I thought about the strange balance of fate. Had my sister invited me, I would have been sitting stiffly at her wedding, smiling politely through speeches, clapping as she kissed her husband. I would have hidden my hurt beneath a mask of support. Instead, I was here, bathed in moonlight, listening to the ocean sing, my heart alive with love and hope. She thought she had punished me, but in truth, she had given me freedom. As the waves whispered against the shore, I closed my eyes and smiled. The world had shifted, and I was no longer the sister left behind. I was the woman stepping into a life of abundance, of joy, of undeniable light. My sister could have her wedding, her jealousy, her regrets. I had something greater, a happiness she could never steal. The morning of my sister's wedding dawned back home while I was already awake thousands of miles away, standing on the deck of our villa, watching the sun rise over the endless Indian Ocean. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, and the water reflected it like liquid fire. I closed my eyes and let the warmth of the light touch my face. A part of me knew that, at that very moment, she would be getting her hair styled, her makeup applied, every detail of her appearance carefully constructed for her big day. I should have felt a pang of longing, a sister's instinct to be there, but instead there was only peace. My place wasn't beside her anymore. It was here, in a world far brighter than the one she had tried to shut me out of. But as calm as I felt, the world back home was beginning to buzz with whispers. My phone began to light up with notifications from family and friends, messages that carried more drama than congratulations. "It feels strange you're not here," one cousin wrote. Another said, "Everyone keeps asking about you." There were subtler notes too, laced with curiosity. "Saw your pictures. Maldives looks like heaven. Timing's interesting though." I scrolled through them slowly, a faint smile tugging at my lips. My sister had wanted me gone to make her day flawless, but my absence had become the loudest presence of all. People weren't marveling at her dress or her flowers. They were whispering about me. My fiancé saw me reading the messages and gently took the phone from my hands. "Don't let them pull you back there," he said, setting it aside. "She chose her day without you. Choose your joy without her." I nodded, but part of me couldn't help picturing the scene unfolding across the ocean. The guests filing into the venue, looking around for me and finding only an empty space. The questions whispered to one another, the sidelong glances, the stories traded under hushed voices. It was ironic, really. She had tried to cut me out to stop comparisons, yet by doing so she had created the very spectacle she wanted to avoid. Later, when we returned from a morning swim, I saw that one of my aunts had posted photos from the wedding on social media. My sister stood in her gown, white and flowing, but there was something in her eyes that betrayed her smile. Her lips were curved, but her gaze looked strained, as if joy had been replaced with irritation. I zoomed in, searching her face the way only a sibling could. I saw it clearly, the tension around her jaw, the slight tightness of her brow. I knew that look. She was bothered. She was thinking about me, even as the cameras flashed and the music played. Throughout the day, the contrast between her world and mine grew sharper. While she stood under artificial lights, reciting vows before a restless audience, I lay on the yacht's deck with the sun warming my skin and the sea breeze lifting my hair. While she posed stiffly for photos with guests whispering behind her back, I danced barefoot on the sand as the tide kissed my ankles. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had tried to exile me from her happiness, but it was her own joy that seemed fragile, while mine blossomed effortlessly. By evening, more messages arrived, each one carrying hints of the wedding's unraveling. "Your sister looked upset today," one cousin wrote. "She cried after the ceremony, not sure why." Another added, "Everyone kept asking where you were, and she snapped at someone for bringing you up." I read those words and felt a strange mixture of sadness and vindication. I didn't want her misery, not really. I didn't want her tears. But I couldn't ignore the truth. Her choice to exclude me had become the seed of her regret. She wanted to control the story of her perfect day, but instead my absence had become the headline. That night, as the sun sank below the horizon and painted the sky in fire, I sat beside my fiancé on the yacht, sipping champagne. He clinked his glass gently against mine. "To freedom," he said. I raised my glass, repeating the word softly. Freedom. That's what it was. Freedom from the chains of jealousy, from the weight of family expectations, from the ache of trying to prove myself to someone who only saw me as a rival. My sister had tried to silence me, but instead, she had given me wings. The stars emerged one by one above us, brighter than any chandelier at a wedding reception. I thought of her then, standing in a decorated hall, surrounded by people yet feeling the emptiness of absence. Did she realize what she had done? Did she understand that by pushing me away, she had drawn all eyes toward me anyway? I would never know the exact thoughts that passed through her mind as she wiped away tears in the corner of her own celebration. But I knew this. She had wanted victory, and instead she had created her own defeat. When I finally put my phone down and leaned against my fiancé, the ocean stretched endlessly before me, dark and alive, a reminder of infinite possibilities. My sister's wedding day would pass into memory, remembered for its flaws and its bitterness. But my memory of that day would be different. It would be of laughter, of salt on my skin, of the man I loved holding me close beneath the stars. In her attempt to make me small, she had shown me just how much I had grown. Weeks passed after my sister's wedding, and though the world seemed to have moved on, I could feel the echoes of that day lingering in the background. Family members who had stayed quiet during the ceremony began reaching out with questions, their voices curious, their words tinged with pity. They wanted to know what had really happened between us, why I hadn't been there, why my sister had been seen crying on her own wedding night. Some were blunt enough to admit what others only implied. The whispers had overshadowed her joy. The absence of her own sister had turned her celebration into a spectacle. I listened politely, but I offered no answers. It was not my responsibility to explain her choices. During those days, I lived as though I had shed a skin that no longer belonged to me. The trip to the Maldives had changed something deep inside. I returned home lighter, freer, as though the ocean had washed away the last remnants of hurt. My fiancé noticed the difference too. He often told me I glowed, that there was a softness in my smile he hadn't seen before. And yet, beneath that glow, there was still a quiet ache. Betrayal doesn't vanish overnight. No matter how far you travel, it lingers like a shadow, reminding you of what once was. Then one evening my phone rang. I almost didn't answer when I saw her name on the screen. My sister. For a long moment, I simply stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to decline the call, to protect the peace I had built since she shut me out. But another part, the part that still remembered the child I used to share secrets with, pressed accept. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Can we talk? We met a few days later at a quiet cafe near the edge of town. She arrived before me, sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped tightly around a coffee cup. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She didn't wait long before speaking. I was wrong, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't even know why I did it. I was jealous, I was afraid. I thought you would take the attention away from me. And now I realize I ruined everything myself. Hearing her say the words I had replayed in my head for weeks was strange, almost surreal. I wanted to be angry, to let her feel the full weight of the hurt she had caused, but all I felt was exhaustion. I had carried her betrayal like a stone in my chest, and now, sitting across from her, I realized I didn't want to carry it anymore. I didn't want to overshadow you, I said quietly. I just wanted to be your sister. I wanted to stand by your side. You took that away from both of us. My voice wavered, but my resolve didn't. She reached for my hand, but I didn't move to meet her halfway. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she admitted how empty her wedding had felt, how the whispers had cut into her joy, how every photo seemed incomplete without me in it. She said she had cried not from happiness but from regret. For a long moment, silence sat between us, heavy and unspoken. Then I told her the truth I had carried since that day. You broke something in me that can't ever go back to the way it was. I can forgive you, but I can't forget. Her eyes widened, as if she had expected forgiveness to mean everything would magically heal. But forgiveness, I realized, is not the same as trust. Forgiveness is a gift. Trust must be earned. She nodded slowly, wiping her tears, as if she finally understood. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she murmured, but I'll try to earn it. Those words softened something inside me. For the first time I saw not my rival, not the woman who had betrayed me, but my sister, the flawed, fragile human being I had grown up with. Maybe she had failed me, but she was still a part of me. When we stood to leave, I hugged her. It wasn't the same kind of hug we used to share. It was tentative, cautious, but it was real. As we pulled away, I told her, The past can't change, but the future is still ours if we choose it. She nodded again, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Thank you." That night, as I lay in bed beside my fiancé, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the escape, the paradise, and finally the reconciliation. It struck me how strange life can be. How one cruel act can lead to unexpected freedom. How heartbreak can open the door to healing. How endings can also be beginnings. My sister had wanted me erased, but in doing so, she had forced me to write my own story, one where I was no longer defined by her jealousy but by my own strength. I realized then that I no longer felt bitterness. I felt something stronger, peace. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. And as I drifted to sleep, listening to my fiancé's steady breathing beside me, I knew that no matter what happened in the future, I had won. Not by revenge, not by triumph, but by choosing love over resentment, freedom over chains, and light over shadows. In the end, my sister's tears had written the story she never intended. A story of betrayal, regret, and fragile forgiveness. And my life, untouched by her attempts to dim me, had become a life brighter than either of us had ever imagined. Sparkles, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Sparkles, subscribe to Twisted Fate Chronicle for more shocking and emotional tales you won't forget.